Oh, good morning, Dr. Haas and Stephen, and Mark. Is Tucker going to be with us as well, or do you know?
Yes, he is coming, Senator.
Yes.
Good morning.
Yeah. Good to see you. I think you folks know everybody, so we can get started. The issue that we wanted to, I guess, chat about and learn a little more about was the issue from last week, and kind of kept getting into it over the weekend to some degree. Was in regards to the difference between maple testing requirements in Vermont and versus federal regs on testing. And I think that we would be interested in knowing a little bit about that history of change when we did it or when it happened, and what the difference. I know it's very small, but in layman's terms, what that difference really is. So I don't know who wants to lead off on that. Kristen, or I mean, you're the boss, so we'll pick on you, I guess. But no, do it any way you'd like, Kristen. If Steve knows about it, or however you want to do it.
Thank you, Senator Starr, and appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your committee regarding one of Vermont's great products. So this is an exciting topic. And for the record, my name is Kristen Haas, Agency of Agriculture, Director of Food Safety and Consumer Protection. And actually, Steve, not to put you on the spot, but I know you've done some research on the history of the current regulatory framework. I'm happy to reiterate what you have shared with me, but perhaps since you are the source of that research, may I ask you to provide an overview, and that way it's straight from the source's mouth, so to speak?
Yes, but I just came because I love to hear about maple, so that's not really fair. Yeah, so absolutely. So probably all the members of the committee know we lost a lot of our institutional historical knowledge that we had when Henry Marcus retired. So he was a longtime expert, and I'm sure could have easily given you an exact explanation for the density requirements. But I did do some statutory research and some rule research, and I didn't have a lot of time to find anything definitive. But it is clear to me that at least since 1981, the statute has allowed the agency to by rule regulate density. And before that, it looked like, and I couldn't, the annotated statutes that I can find online only go back to 1989. So I couldn't find the 1981 version itself, but it looks to me like that statutory rubric in 1981 replaced a law that was adopted in 1947. So we don't really know exactly how long the density standards go back, but we know that we've been able to regulate density since at least 1981. Now, the current rule that's in effect has been in effect since 1990. I don't know if there was a rule that preceded it. I assume there was, but I'm not certain. And I couldn't find the 1990 version of the rule online. I'm sure it exists, but it wasn't available online. The 1990 rule, though, is the current rule, and it was amended in 2005 and again in 2014. So in 2000, and I'm sorry, Senator Starr, you're on mute.
If it was changed or altered, explain that a little bit, Steve.
Well, so we think, and this is from the institutional knowledge that we still have, which is not Henry, but others, we think that it has not changed since 1990. So we think the standards have been the same, but we're not positive. But what I can tell you is that the current standard has definitely been in effect since at least 2005. Because I have the 2005 rule, and those density requirements are identical to what they are today. So we know it's been at least 16 years, but we think from talking to people in the agency who have dealt with density that they've been in effect even longer. And since the rule was adopted in 1990 and there were no changes between 1990 and 2005, we believe the density standards have been in effect since at least 1990. And so this is nothing new, I guess, is the point. But we do have a higher sugar content than the USDA requires. And one other interesting sidelight is that issue was squarely addressed in 2014. So when we amended the rule in 2014, there's an introductory paragraph to that rule amendment, and density was not changed at all. But in that introductory paragraph, the agency made explicit that it was retaining the higher density standard because to promote the Vermont maple flavor, essentially. So there's a belief, and we think it's probably true, that the higher sugar content creates a different flavor and a higher maple flavor. So whether or not that's scientifically true, I can't attest to, but we do know that the density issue was discussed at least, and an intentional decision was made in 2014 to leave the higher density standard in place because of this, at minimum, this different reputational benefit of having the higher sugar content be the minimum. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, and just a quick question. When you speak about rule, are you talking about a rule that goes through LCAR, or a rule that you folks could change at the agency? I mean, how's that work, Steve?
So, Senator, it's by rule, and so it is something we could change, but only by going through the APA process. And that's pursuant to in our legislative authority. The legislature gave us that. It gave it what it said, and this is in section 487 of Title VI, and this was going back to at least 1981. The legislature said that the agency shall promulgate regulations for grading maple syrup, and that we may promulgate regulations for density. So that's at least since 1981, and we know that in the 1990 rule we have basically the same standard since then. And we have created grades and density. So we've done that both through the APA process, and to change that, we would have to go back through the APA, Senator.
Yeah, Senator Collmore.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Steve, do you know the last time that the federal standard and the Vermont standard were the same?
So, Senator, I tried to find that out. And the current USDA standard was adopted in 2015. And and I did not find whether or not there was a standard before. And as I understand it, it's not even in statute. I think it's a voluntary marketing standard that USDA uses. So it's something that you don't have to comply with it at all. But if you're going to call it maple, then you have to meet that standard. But I did look at a journal that was published. It's I can't think of the name of it now, but it's sort of a famous maple sugar makers journal. And I think it was the 2013 copy. And in that journal, the only density standard that mentioned was Vermont standard. And it said all the hydrometers were in attune to the Vermont standard. So I'm guessing, and this is a guess, and maybe others know, that maybe there wasn't a USDA standard and that people sort of use Vermont's by default, but that is a guess.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mark, do you know anything about that history from the extension's point of view?
Sure. Thank you, Senator Starr. And just to introduce myself, I'm Mark Isselhart, Maple Specialist with the University of Vermont Extension. So I'm an educator, do research and support the maple industry in Vermont and elsewhere. So there has been a USDA standard for a long time.
Okay.
I don't have the exact date, but I would put it somewhere in the 1940s, somewhere in there. I'd be happy to share the reference I have for that. The alignment with Vermont standards, I believe the Vermont minimum density is close to 100 years old. I think it's been around for a very long time. And I do agree that it was set intentionally to provide, not to get too into the weeds, but a better mouthfeel, which would in turn produce better flavor, a better tasting product. True, you would also boil a little bit more to get more flavor. So it's a combination of the sensory and the production of syrup with a little more density would make it a better product. And my understanding is that the maple industry in Vermont was very intentional about that and chose to differentiate it. It's true that a lot of these regulations or references are hard to find. And I know that there are some cabinets both at UVM and at the agency that probably have the answers, but I'd be more than happy to dig through when I can and provide the committee with any references I can find that aren't available online.
Well, yeah, we all strongly support our maple industry and certainly want to make sure that our maple's the best in the world, not just here in Vermont or in the US. There's reasons why it does taste better, and probably this density level, is there for that very reason. I'm wondering, is there if a package is marked maple spread or maple candy, if the word maple is on there, does that maple within, they mix cream and other things in, does that maple have to test at a certain density level? Am I understanding that correctly, or how does that work?
So, Senator, I think probably Tucker or Dr. Haas could answer this better, but what I do know is that if it says maple, it has to be a complete maple product. So it has to be, it has to be 100% from maple sap, boiled, nothing added. There is grade A characterization, and then there's a processed characterization. And I believe the density requirement for processed is lower. So I think the density requirement could be less for something used for maple flavoring, but Tucker or Dr. Haas might better answer that, or Mark.
Yep. One of you folks want to take a crack at that?
Tucker, would you be willing to, you're the current agency subject matter expert on questions like this, so go for it.
That's little Tucker's little Henry.
Tucker has been working very hard and has done a great job on making sure that things are as they should be out there. So yeah, he's a wealth of knowledge on this, as is Mark.
Yeah.
So
I think he likes to be called Big Henry, though.
Yeah, I feel lucky enough to have received some training from Henry before he retired. So to answer your question, Senator, the density requirements relate only to grade A maple syrup. There is a processing grade density for that, but when it comes to something like a maple candy or maple butter or maple cream, the density requirement doesn't apply to those products. They're going to be a much higher density as a not a liquid product.
Yeah. So candy and spreads and all those things, lollipops and those things are different than the actual fluid maple syrup.
Correct.
And what's the difference, Tucker, between the density level of our maple syrup compared to if you went to using a federal reg or bought some from a state that only used the federal regulation?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. It's fairly minimal. There
Okay.
are two different metrics that are different scales that you can measure density by. There's the Baumé scale and then the Brix scale. You can think of these as it's similar to inches and centimeters, where you've got two different scales, but that you can make. You can use either. Either is fine to use. It's perhaps easiest if I put it in terms of the Brix scale and compare it. Well, the other thing to keep in mind is that the temperature of the syrup when you're measuring it is important to that measurement. So you have to choose one of the scales and then also have a reference temperature. So it's easiest probably to make the comparison at the reference temperature of 68 degrees Fahrenheit, and also using the Brix 68.
How many? 88?
68.
68. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
So at 68 Fahrenheit, using the Brix scale, the USDA standard is 66.0, and Vermont standard, when you make the conversion, is 66.5.
Oh, so it's pretty small, and I mean the difference is pretty close. And
Yeah. Yep.
so my next question would be, if it's so close, why, if I wanted to make maple, why would I not go with the Vermont standard, especially living here in Vermont, rather than the federal standard? I mean, must be talking about pennies a gallon difference in cost or savings.
Right. I guess the simplest answer is that there is a cost savings, even though it's going to be small. But I guess it depends on how much, syrup you're producing. If you're producing, gallons and gallons of syrup, then that difference will be greater based on the volume that you're selling. But if you're a smaller producer, that's going to be a pretty minimal difference.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could figure that out. We have some producers that do 10,000 gallons, certainly. The big one up in Island Pond, Vermont, I can't even guess how many thousands of gallons they make. So if you were their size and could save a half a point, but that half a point's on 66. So in a gallon, you'd be down to maybe 3, right? 0.3. Yeah, because you got 30. If you took the degrees, can you ever change that to 100, Tucker, so that you could calculate out the savings?
Yeah,
Is it?
Steve actually asked me to do some of this math beforehand. So I did try and make that calculation, and if I did it correctly, it equates to less than 1%.
Yeah.
Difference.
Well, 5. If you take 0.5, and use the 66, you know, you're down there pretty darn low. And
Yeah.
so it's, yeah, that's splitting pennies, I would say. But anyways, questions from the committee in regards to this whole discussion? So we're talking about a very slight difference between the federal level and our state level. And I guess the next question is, do you ever get any requests like from the feds to do any testing for them, or do they have anybody that even goes around and checks maple at all, or maybe at imports, or if you're exporting or something? Is there any knowledge about that? No?
Senator, I was just going to say that I'm not aware in the 14 years that I've been with the agency of that being a program that is ongoing out there. We used to, when there was a demand for it, our team under Henry Marcus's guidance used to do periodic inspections and grading of bulk containers of maple for the private sector, and we would charge a fee for service for that. So that activity went on. Not that that is, I realize that's different than what you're asking about, but I just mention it as a additional sort of scope of work that we used to do. But then that demand dried up, and so we haven't done that in quite some time. But Mark, maybe you have history on this.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll say that the only federal presence I'm aware of is through inspections of sugar houses related to FSMA, which is food safety. It's not syrup quality. And my understanding, and there have been sugar houses in Vermont that have been inspected by FDA consistently. Not a huge amount, but enough to get folks' attention. But again, this is based on food safety. They wouldn't necessarily be checking syrup density as a matter of course. This might be just a historical artifact, but I believe that the reason why the Vermont law is what it is because the Baumé scale was the dominant scale at the time, and that range goes from 36 to 37 Baumé. And if you look at the Vermont statute, it still says Baumé, and then Brix is sort of in parentheses. So I think we might be looking at is a fairly old artifact that the other industries, the other states and the federal law just didn't use Baumé. It wasn't, and they were relatively late. You know, Vermont was early in adopting maple regulations compared to the federal. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, well, you know, Vermonters and, you know, farmers were the first ones, I would say, that really, you know, did in the spring, you automatically tapped what maples you could and made maple syrup to, you know, for your family and to sell to make a little money. I know I had plenty of years growing up when in the late fall, you'd after the wood and all that was put away, you'd do Christmas trees. And then you had a little time off, but then you'd get ready for sugaring in the spring, and just a constant one job to the next. But you know, I think over the years, our Maple Sugar Makers Association, along, of course, with all their members, have done a good job of promoting a excellent product, and I would expect that you know, some of them older folk, well, our forefathers pushed this stuff along to stay you know, a little bit ahead of the rest of the pack, and The, but the issue that we wanted to get clarified, one of our, or a couple of our fellow senators were asking questions in regards to, so they mentioned it to me, and I felt that we should look into this to see, what the difference is and what the cost difference could add up to, but it's a pretty minute issue, I think. Senator Collmore?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm really blown away by the fact that 0.6 degrees, and I realize this is a pretty subjective kind of evaluation. It's kind of like who has the best apples in the country. Well, I guess that depends on who you ask and who has the best corn tasting products. But anyway, I'm glad that we do, and I really do think we do, but I'm just absolutely amazed that it comes down to such a, it's not infinitesimal, but it's pretty darn small difference. And congratulations to the sugar makers for promoting it and being able to market it as this obviously better product. I mean, I'm not sure I could tell if you gave me something from New York State or something from Vermont that I'd be able to say, that's definitely better tasting maple. And that must be because it's from Vermont. So it's pretty amazing. And thank you all for coming in, because this is pretty interesting stuff to me.
Well, I doubt, Collmore, if you could tell, because you live too close to New York and are probably already getting some of that cheaper syrup anyways.
Mr. Chair, I only buy Vermont maple syrup.
Any other questions from the committee, or do any of you have anything else you'd like to express or offer?
Senator Starr, I would also add for your committee's additional context or awareness, if anyone is interested, and I can send the link to Linda or whatever your preference is on that front, but on our website, Tucker has done a really nice job of making available to the general public and to you all, if you so choose, so a summary from the 2020 inspections, retail maple inspections that he completed, as well as a quite detailed inspection protocol, such that if anyone were to have questions about, hey, what does Tucker do when he goes into Hannaford or to the co-op and goes to inspect a lot of maple syrup? It spells that out. So if that would be of interest to you, it is available on our website, and we intend to do the same thing at the conclusion of the 2021, this year's maple inspections, just to help inform the industry as well as consumers of sort of the generic set of findings. We don't highlight any individual business findings or producer findings, but instead capture that data in a quantitative format and post it so that people can have an idea of what those findings are. So I can send Linda the web link if you would like, or send it directly to you, Senator Starr.
Just send it to our web link for Linda, and then she'll get it to all of us.
Okay.
And I thought you were going to announce that you were going to have the Maple Festival, and then you come out with all this stuff. I mean, we could have been going to a party if you'd announced the Maple Festival was on.
I am as
You're all
ready
still
as
welcome to come up.
yeah.
They sent out an email today of revised, but we love the Maple Festival. My mom ran the parade there for like 10 or 15 years.
Are they going to do it or no?
No, not. They're going to do something, but not the traditional.
Yeah, that's really quite a shindig.
If I could add one thing.
Yes, Mark.
Sorry to interrupt, Senator. I do want to just say, even though the absolute number in difference in density is small, there is a difference in mouthfeel, and I think it's important for folks to recognize. If you grade syrup at contests like at the Maple Festival and you taste hundreds of samples, there is a difference. And so the viscosity it's different. It's not a linear relationship. So when you get little differences in density at syrup level, it can make a difference. So I appreciate the small number in units, but it can have an effect in the sensory perception of syrup. And I know that's pretty far in the weeds, but there is an effect there, I could say.
A positive effect I would take, right?
For sure. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And the other thing to point out is that the regulation has a range of from 66.9 to 68.9 Brix. So there is a pretty broad range that's acceptable for density in syrup. And we're talking at the low end, but there is a range on the high end as well. So it's not a one point that bullseye they have to hit as far as meeting the standard.
So there is some leeway in there. Steve?
Thank you, Senator Starr. I just wanted to add that it's our experience that the maple sugar producers are very interested in this standard as well. And as recently as 2019, they were telling us about their desire to have this enforced, because they do. And I think there's a good amount of advertising that they and others do that touts the higher standard. And in terms of the viscosity difference, and to Senator Collimore's point, there is apparently a notable difference, and I'll be happy to taste test to find out. But in Tucker's calculation, the amount of sap is really pretty minuscule for that difference in density. And so if Tucker's calculated what for the average of when the sugar content is at average, and it takes about 40 gallons to boil of sap to boil 1 gallon of syrup, it's only about 0.3 gallons more sap to reach the Vermont standard. So that's really, in terms of the economic differential, it seems pretty minuscule for retaining that advantage that producers have kind of fought for, I think.
I'll say that this committee was lucky enough to at one time have former legislator Carol Brannigan on it, and then we used to have Harvey Smith from the House Ag Committee come in, and they both had sugar they both made sugar, and I could taste the difference between the two. And there was a contest about who was better and all that kind of stuff. Seems like there was maybe a third or fourth person involved too, but I don't remember.
Yeah, Carolyn always won, I think.
Yeah.
Of course, she kept us supplied with that
Yes,
all
she did.
season long.
We were a
We
little
kinda-
biased there. Yeah.
But you think about this whole issue. If I'm a syrup maker and Dave Marvin wants to come along and buys my syrup, he's going to get syrup that should test 6.6, right? And then if he takes and does whatever he does to it and sells it cuts it down to just 66 instead of 6.5, he's the one that's making the money on it, isn't the sugar maker? Because we all are at the same standard, and usually, as far as I know, other than the grade, if you meet the certain grade, you get paid the same price if you're from Franklin County or from Orleans County. So, if somebody's going to make some money by diluting this, it really isn't quite right. But anyways, anything else from any of you folks? If not, Mark, did you have?
Well, I just wanted to say that there is actually a differentiation for bulk syrup being sold. It's actually a lower minimum density for bulk syrup. I believe it's 65.9. To your point about a producer would be advantageous to meet so as not to lose any if they sold it in bulk, which close to 90% of Vermont syrup is sold in bulk now. That's changed in the last, I would say in the last 30, 40 years, it's gone from about roughly 50-50 to now close to 90%. So, but there is a differentiation for bulk syrup.
Is that reason because the volume that we make has increased, but yet our population and people eating maple hasn't grown a whole heck of a lot? Is that why it moved up to quite?
Well, we haven't done a whole lot of research to understand why, but I think the best explanation is that the big growth we've seen in the industry in the last 20, 25 years has been in the larger sized operations. And it's very difficult to market syrup retail. It takes a lot of money and time. And I think a lot of those producers are content and have developed businesses that can be successful, but selling to a packer. That's my understanding.
Yep. Any other questions, statements? If not, thanks a lot, folks, for coming in, and this is very helpful, and we'll pass the word around that we looked into it, and I think people will appreciate that. So good enough, and thanks again, and we'll see you sometime along.
Thanks so much
you.
for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I've enjoyed being surrounded by experts. It's been an easy gig for me. So this is awesome. Thank you all.
Take care.
well, the boss, as long as you have good help, you don't need to know everything. Just hire good help. Yeah, take care, folks.
Take care.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Sure.
So committee, I don't know if we got, if we had any of our folks from yesterday come back today or not. Gail, have we got anybody in the waiting room?
There is no one in the waiting room right now.
Yeah.
I did see an email from Graham, Mr. Chair. He sent it about 10:20 this morning.
Yeah.
What did he sent an email, Brian?
Yeah, he sent it to everybody. We're sincerely grateful for your willingness to take testimony on S25. We offer here some bullet points about making cannabis an agricultural product, and look forward to chatting with you again. So my guess is that they will be coming in.
Well, I mention that we would try to work them back in today?
Yes.
Yeah. But I think I did tell them 11, right around 11.
You did.
Did you folks get your, did you get copies of what we received from Michelle?
No.
No. I think only you got it, or you and Chris maybe.
Hell.
You want me to forward it?
Well,
yeah,
because what we got from Graham is pretty long and involved. I mean, it's like a whole
Right.
discussion. I mean, I think that what we were hoping to get from Michelle was something kind of short and direct. That was my
we did. Yeah, could you do that, Chris? Because I doubt if Gail has that.
No, I don't.
Yeah, so it is short. I don't know if you can see that, but it's pretty
Yeah.
short, and there's only either 2 items in that language or 3 that I think that we might be interested in chatting about. And we don't want to, you go and load a whole pickup load up, Sears going to throw it, back it up to the dump and dump it. You send him something that he can use, he may, simple and short and direct, we might, get it added in. um,
So I just sent you the language and I'm trying to open it up now.
Senator Pearson, did you include Linda in that?
No, but I will send it to her and to you right now.
Should this be posted on the committee page, Senator Starr?
not really.
Okay,
Not, I mean, we're gonna talk about it first and see if, if
I
the
don't-
committee wants to do it, once we chat about it, fine, but this is just for our discussion purposes, for the purpose of following through on the request of the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, that he wanted us to look at the ag part of the cannabis bill.
guys.
I'm not
thank
sure
you.
what you have, Mr. Chair, but what Chris sent is 2 pages long.
Yeah,
Well, but isn't the bulk of it on this very first page where it raises the minimum or the small guys from 1,000 to 1,500 square feet?
Yeah,
And then
Yep.
down, and it shall, down a couple of lines, cultivator licenses and shall include production limits. And then down in B near the bottom, the largest
Yep.
maximum size would be 10,000 square feet.
Says
30,000. You're looking at the first draft, Bobby.
Yeah, I thought it was 10 too.
Well,
Also-
that's what it is now, I think.
No, we have no limit now. We have talked in the past about 10,000. The suggestion from some of the folks yesterday was 10,000. But that seemed very small to me. And but I'll confess, I don't really have a clue.
It's a quarter of an acre, Chris.
Yeah. So, I
No,
mean,
20 by 50.
as the cap, the biggest. So here's where I thought through, and this is why I landed at 30,000. In Massachusetts, the smallest level is 5,000 square feet. We're proposing going from 1,000 to 1,500. So that's about a third of what Massachusetts does. In Massachusetts, the cap is 100,000 square feet.
Oh,
What,
that's
2
acres,
Yeah,
two and a half acres. That's big.
So I decided to stick with the third of Massachusetts. So both of them are scaled to about a third of Massachusetts. So 30,000 square feet. That's not even an acre. It's about 2/3 of an
Three
acre.
quarters,
Yeah. What's an acre? 43,000.
42, 43. Depends on who's running the ruler.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I'm open to discussing it, but this does not seem to me to be a runaway operation here. We need, if anything, there's a risk in other states, excuse me, of running out of product. So I don't know. Anyway, that's the logic. We just went on both levels with about a third of what Massachusetts is permitted.
See, like, if you went to the 30,000 square feet, would that be indoor, Chris, or outdoor? Because you could build a building over that if you wanted, without a whole lot of cost.
About a third of what Massachusetts is permitted. It's silent on indoor, outdoor.
And even on the small end, it's silent, right? But
Gail had a question, Bobby.
who?
Gail,
Oh,
Oh,
that's all right. I was just going to let you know that the witnesses have joined us.
okay. yeah, we
oh,
see.
okay. Yeah, you can let them in.
Anyway, I mean, I'm reminded that one of the challenges here is the premise in the law has been that we're charging the board to kind of figure out roughly how much they think we need, and therefore how many permits and what kind of permits are needed to achieve the volume of the expected business. And in historically over the last many years, the legislature's tried to come up with, you should have this many small permits, this many medium, this many big. And as it was advancing, I think the feeling was the board will figure out the lay of the land. They'll figure out, therefore, how many permits in each category and the fees that will go along with it, because after all, you need the fees to raise the money to handle it. And so the risk that we have here is that disconnect between all of those moving parts if we're injecting ourselves. So anyway, trying to come up with some logic, I just went with a third of what they're doing in Massachusetts, figuring that we would want to have a smaller scale than our neighbors to the south.
And ours both on both ends do they have a top end on theirs too, Chris?
Yeah, 100,000 square feet.
Yeah, so we went a third on the low end and a third on the upper end. No. We went a third of theirs on both of ours. So that put us at 1,500 on the low end and 30,000 square feet on the upper end, maximum size. So, and is there, have you looked at, the board would determine how many of each of those is allowed? So
That's my understanding of the law. Yes, already.
So you could, if you hung back and didn't get in, you could be excluded from participating because the board could feel that the market is full. Am I stating that right?
Well,
They wouldn't issue you a license. If the market was full and I'm a year or two behind of applying and getting in, the board, if everything was full, the board could regulate the supply of that product or of the growers that are supplying the market.
As far as I understand it, yeah.
Yeah, and we're not addressing that here.
No.
If anything, we're making it probably more likely that more businesses come in because we're making sure that, although at the small end, we're making them bigger. So it's hard to know, but.
No, but I think overall, Chris, you're right. We're clearly favoring smaller enterprises.
But heck, if you had a plot that was 10,000 square feet, I mean, you aren't gonna be able to have more than 8 or 10 plants. I mean, those things really get bushy. I thought they had to have like 6 feet or something around them, to have a row down through to, a pathway, and you aren't gonna have many plants on 10,000 square feet. So anyway.
I mean, it's impossible to know entirely. What we're saying here is there's an entry level, a craft level that's a little bit easier to get into, requires less capital, so it's presumably easier for different kinds of folks to get in, BIPOC and others. we give them a head start in the structure in terms of the timing, so that the hope has always been that that gives them an entry into the market, not just that they can be up and running, but that they actually can sell their product and create some business relationships that are meaningful. There's not a lot of guarantees here, but that is the vision.
No. That's farming. There's no guarantees.
I'm sure a lot of our vegetable growers would like this kind of timeline advantage, but we could say the vegetable growers of Franklin County can start selling their vegetables 3 months ahead of Chittenden County. See if that would help.
Well, they
We don't
probably
call
will,
them farmers, we call them gardeners.
they'll probably cross-pollinate their carrots with a little cannabis and say, hey, I've got some carrots that'll spike you up here.
Calm you
But
down.
anyway.
It works the other way, Bobby.
So guys, we've got Jeffrey and Josh back. Maddie's with us. I don't know if Graham's with us or not, but good to see you guys back. We did get a change, some changes done to the bill that I don't know if have you guys been in so you could hear us chatting, or did you just get in?
I've been in for a few minutes, but I think it might be helpful if you're willing to just share the language that you're looking at, either verbally or otherwise, because we don't have access to that. So it's hard to know what you're referring to.
Well, that's just as well. It's better if you don't see it.
As
Yeah.
you know, we've also submitted some of our own, so we're happy to just look at that.
Well, Gail, did you get a copy of that that Chris sent?
I did, Mr. Chair.
Is that something that you could pull up on the screen? That I don't know how deep I think, Chris, did you have those changes on the first page made so we can use just the little section, or do we need to have?
I think it got a little longer because in talking to Michelle, she remembered she had to loop in the current use piece. You can't just change it in the amounts, but you also have to change it in the permission for current use. So I think that's why the second go around was a little longer, Bobby. But
Yeah.
I could email it, or Gail could. It'd probably be easiest just to post it to the website, I think, and that way.
Yeah, then you guys could pull it up, right, Maddie?
Yeah, that would be
Senator Starr. I will have to, I don't have access to your page, so let me notify Linda. And in the meantime, why don't I put it on my screen to share?
Yeah.
Okay.
But basically, what we have gotten done so far is, yesterday we talked about the small growers being capped out. If you go over to page 2, we increased that number from 1,000 square feet to 1,500 square feet, so that our small craft people, could grow a little bit larger crop, and even 1,500 feet is what's that? A little strip, 30 by 50, which is not very big. I don't know. We were talking before you folks came on about how much room a plant actually has to have and keep it separated from the next plant. But I know I've looked at some hemp fields, and it seems like they've got to be at least 4 or 6 feet apart. Like, it is is cannabis a plant? Do any of you know how much room you need for a cannabis plant?
I can take that, Chair Start, and thanks for asking. And good to see everybody again. Good morning, almost good afternoon. Yes, indoor, considerably less space is needed. We're talking a foot to 2 feet, maybe 3 feet max. I want to say indoor, whereas outdoor, yes. The spacing would be anywhere from, we had said 9 to 15 feet, which of course would preclude, smaller plots, but larger plots with larger plants need more spacing. So you're right. 5, 10, 15 feet for outdoor. Indoor, not so much, a foot to 2 feet.
So could you use, say it, you go tell somebody a foot or two. I mean, we're better off to use the larger number if we can. Not that that would be in any rules or laws, but it would, for the people that are skeptical about the whole situation, it would seem to me if we use the maximum footage, it would certainly sell those people on the idea, well, this isn't too bad. So could you use 3 feet indoors, and I mean, just roughly thinking, in maybe 6. See, we didn't differentiate between inside and outside. We've left that language sort of alone. Chris?
Well, Bobby, I went around and around with Michelle on this because, as I've said, I would love to find us a way to be encouraging outdoor growth. It was hard, and as soon as you touch it one place, suddenly we're not looking at a 2-page thing. We're sending Sears quite a complicated situation. So, given that we've had a half a day to deal with this, I'll just be honest and say I tried to figure it out and we couldn't. I'm certainly very supportive of us doing that. But it is, especially now that we're limiting or we're putting numbers down, do we mean those to be outdoor numbers or indoor numbers? We would have to make some decisions, and I'm not, I was also trying to say to Michelle, well, just direct the board. They can figure out different tiers based if it's indoor or outdoor. She sort of thought that they could already do that. Massachusetts, they delineate that way along with the fees, but not with the tiers. So it's cheaper if you're going to be outside, reflecting that you're less resource intensive, I guess. But anyway, it's complicated. What can I tell you? And I failed to do it. And I'm sure people have ideas of how we could do it. I do as well. But it will not be, a short memo if we try to craft those solutions.
Oh, I think we're better off to leave it vague. If you go outside, you're going to grow bigger plants. But if you've got 1,500 feet instead of 1,000, shouldn't you still be able, a small craft grower, cultivator, wouldn't he be able to still make $1 or $2 if we could get rid of his product? You guys, do you?
If I may, Senator, I can quickly speak. This is Graham Uningster, Knox Policy Director at Rural Vermont. And sorry if you hear a little noise in the background. I have my 11-month-old daughter with me. But there is language in the bill currently around, what the number of square feet, the 1,000 square foot rule. And it doesn't, as you said, distinguish between indoor and outdoor. And that is what we find extremely problematic because assuming it goes to the CCB, and as we're saying, they can make all these distinctions, if it's legislatively mandated that the lowest license is 1,000 square feet, then they can't, for example, say, well, for outdoor growing, the smallest license should be 4,000 square feet. And that's what our point is. We've recommended that the small craft tier for outdoor would be 4,000, and the small craft tier for indoor would be 1,000 for the reasons that Jeffrey just mentioned, as well as the crop loss that Joshua talked about yesterday, and just all of those things. And I'll pass it over to Jeffrey or Joshua to respond more.
I just want
just quickly. Oh, sorry. Go.
I just wanted to add, if you don't mind, Josh, go after me. Chair Starr, and I appreciate the concerns you bring up, Senator Pearson. I echo the urgency, though, of my colleague, and I want to provide some context here. These are simplifications of the law by inserting a 4 to 2 to 1 ratio. We think it provides clarity where there is currently uncertainty for farmers and small businesses. And we are not plucking this out of thin air. These are firm precedent that you find in agrarian states, Northern California, parts of Oregon. You may not see it necessarily in Massachusetts. You'll see it in Maine, where they have, like Vermont, a larger agricultural community. They embrace these simplified standards out of the gate using legislation. I just want to provide that context. Sorry, Josh.
No, thank you. I also, for further context, a few other things to think about with the difference between outdoor and indoor and mixed light growing. Outdoor growing, you're only getting 1 harvest per year. So while your plants may be larger and you may be getting more product, you're banking on 1 harvest, maybe 2 if you're doing light deprivation in a mixed light situation, but you need to have a greenhouse in order to do that process. Whereas indoor, you can rotate harvests through separate rooms and have more steady supply through the season. Also, in terms of price per pound, indoor product is generally regarded as higher quality. So while it's much more expensive to invest in an indoor grow, the poundage that you get is worth more on a weight basis than if you were growing outdoors. So, these are some of the dynamics here that definitely need to be taken into consideration. And while I agree it can get complex if that gets too narrowly defined, at a broad level, distinguishing outdoor, mixed light, and indoor differentiation on the basis of size of grow or anything like that, I think can be a pretty straightforward exercise. And I think the language that we provided in bullet point form is relatively simple. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, I would just echo what everyone said. And I'd be interested to know maybe a little bit more, Senator Pearson, about, what's particularly complicated about that and whether our language is helpful in really providing some clarification. I would also just say, this is the first time that we've been able to take up this bill with the Ag Committee, and we're really grateful to be able to do so. And I think that this issue of defining, indoor versus outdoor cultivation and putting some parameters around those is really one of the main cruxes of what we're trying to get at with looking at this more as an agricultural product. And frankly, myself, I haven't been as deeply engaged in this issue for as many years as my colleagues here have, but this is one of the few areas where I have had conversations, for example, with Senator Polina and, previously Senator Zuckerman around how the agricultural aspect of this could really be addressed. So I think this is something that's, worth putting a little bit of effort into, if nothing else.
I don't know how complicated Senator Sears is going to want us to make this into, but I would presume that on most small farms or places where they might get into producing hemp or cannabis, that a lot of these places have got a building that's 30 by 50, and they could do inside growing pretty easy. Whereas if they put this outside, it's got to be fenced in a secure manner, and you've got to have protective devices to monitor and keep track of everything. And I was more interested in getting that number, trying to get that number up to a size that a person could make some money at if you increase the size by 50%, go from 1,000 to 1,500, it, you know, it makes quite a difference in the end result, or it should, on how much money you might be able to make off from being a little craft cultivator and being able to use 1,500 feet. But no one has mentioned yet how much, if everything worked perfect, how much you could do on 1,500 feet. I think we talked a little yesterday about 1,000 square feet. Any estimates on 1,500 feet? Nope.
I would just quickly say, Senator, just to address what you said about the farms having like a facility that can convert to an indoor growing facility, that's a significant undertaking, and a lot of farms I think would prefer just to do what they know how to do and grow outside in a reasonable amount of space that makes sense for their farm. A lot of people also don't have structures like that are readily usable or adaptable to such a use. So I think that to answer your question on 1,500 square feet, I mean, if you take what Jeffrey just said about, you know, 2 to 3 feet between plants indoor and 10 feet, let's say, between outdoor plants, you know, you get at least some idea about the number of plants. And I don't have any amount of production, but just to remind you that the numbers we came to were based on some surveys and studies of Vermont growers and cultivators currently. So it was meant to reflect what would be a reasonable livelihood for a small scale of producer. And that 1,000 square feet we suggested was specifically for indoor in that survey.
I don't know if you ran some quick numbers, if you had 30 by 50 to do 1,500 square feet, you could go roughly 10 plants, 3 plants long, which would be, and then you could go 5 wide or 4. So, you know.
So, sorry, I just want to offer some context on the what you asked for about the finances surrounding the different sizes and projected harvests. I just did some quick back of the envelope calculations. So if you're growing a plant outdoors in Vermont, banking on a pound of usable product from that plant is a good goal that you can reliably hit if you grow well. It's not guaranteed. Sometimes it's less, but you know, that'd be a successful harvest. Outdoor product in a mature market, I think from what we see in other states, reasonably could hit $800 a pound. That's if it's, you know, if you're growing higher quality for outdoor product in a mature market. So that is $120,000 a year in revenue for a 1,500 square foot outdoor plot. That doesn't include any costs the farmer is going to undertake, any labor costs, any water, any nutrients, any soil, any compost, any fencing, if that is in the bill, although we of course hope that that is removed as a requirement for outdoor grows. If you're growing indoor and you get 3 pulls a year from 1,500 square feet, and if that is all flower, mind you, that some of that will have to be vegetative growth. So these could be very well be inflated numbers. 3 harvests a year indoors, you know, you're talking about significantly more revenue if that product fetches a higher price at market. If we take $1,800 a pound for a wholesale number, which again is generous in a mature market, you know, that you're looking at $810,000 of revenue a year as that size company. Once again, though, you have electricity costs, you have equipment costs, things breaking all the time, you have labor costs. So you can definitely run a business, a profitable business at that scale indoors, but you can see the difference in the cash and the revenue for an outdoor grow operating at 1,500 square feet versus an indoor grow operating at 1,500 square feet. And therein is why, from a farmer's perspective, differentiating outdoor, indoor is so important.
But if if we're silent on this, you know, you can do either, as long, if it isn't talked about, it's kind of silent. So if you're, Graham just said, well, you know, you'd rather grow outdoors. Well, hell, if you could generate $800,000 compared to $100,000, you can build quite a building for a couple $100,000, I would think. I just built a 40 by 70 building for $130,000, and it's all insulated, lighted, heated, you know, the whole 9 yards. And
Totally.
I could have 2 levels to grow hemp or cannabis on if I put a floor in the middle. So, you know, why would you want to fool around outdoors if you know, unless you wanted to build a market? I don't know what the thinking is.
Well, you know, we got, I believe it was 60% of respondents, growers that responded to VGA's survey in the state plan on growing outdoors. I think it's also important to remember that extracts are a huge element of the industry, and that extracted product is going to require a lot of supply going in, a lot of bulk supply, which outdoor is, you know, perfectly suited for. So when we're thinking about supporting a market, while yes, it certainly is incentivizing if you can afford to invest in indoor cultivation and go through the hiccups and risks that come with indoor cultivation. It's a more fragile environment than growing outdoors. You know, you can, it's definitely incentivizing for people to do that. But we, of course, are, you know, like Senator Pearson said, I think there's a lot of good reason to try to encourage outdoor growing. And there is a lot of the market that will have demand for outdoor growing, and the scale that's required to feed the supply in the state from an extraction product perspective, I think, you know, should just be reasonably considered when we're thinking about what a farmer growing outdoors should be able to do in participating in the market. So,
Chris?
I would just say that, you know, it's important to remember these small licenses are held under a lighter regulatory touch. So we are working hard to see if we can't introduce people into the universe. And I guess I have a question for Graham. It's too bad Maddie had to leave, but you know, I was in meetings that maybe people didn't see, where we had to fight like hell with other counterparts to get 1,000 square feet of outdoor land used, that's in current use, to be maintained in current use, 1,000 square feet. So the proposal that we will now, you would have us take back to make that 4,000 or whatever, 6,000 square feet and go, you know, it's just not going to happen. And so I get that that's not what you want us to tell you, but there will become a strategy point here of, do we have any bill at all, or do we ask for everything we want and get nothing, or do we make some improvements and continue to advance this? And that's, you know, not fair, and life is, you know, filled with these choices in our jobs, and it's not fun for any of us, but that is the reality. So my question, Graham, have you even once talked to Janet Ansell about increasing the threshold that she would be open to allowing in current use? Because that is what we're talking about as we talk about these changes in numbers. Even shifting to 1,500 is going to be a battle with her, but at least
I think we could win that one, Chris.
I think so too, but it won't, you know. And it's not just her, but she represents you know, a lot of folks in the other, well, obviously she's powerful on the committee, but you know, it's just a tricky dynamic that I have to, it's part of my calculation as I try to think of the right move here. But Graham, do you have any indication that she's interested in being more flexible than she was 5 months ago?
I mean, as I've said, you know, I reached out to Janet via email, I think a month ago or so after I last one of the times we spoke and you recommended I did. And I will remind you that, you know, Janet Ansel is my personal representative, but I'm here in my professional capacity working at rural Vermont. So I understand that she has a particular positionality and power within the State House as well. She responded, like I said yesterday, that she wasn't in charge of agricultural issues until you told us yesterday that she was sort of critical in taking apart, you know, what you're talking about now. We didn't know specifically, you know, we can't see inside those committees of conference to see who does what at what point. She told me that she's not on an agricultural committee. She only does money stuff, and she doesn't, you know, deal with these types of issues. I'm happy to talk with her.
Current use is a money thing, right? So this is where she gets her hooks into. I'm not trying to, you know,
no,
that's
I hear
just
you.
the reality that we're working in.
Well, let me just complete my response. I will reach out to her. I have her phone number now, and she's invited me to call her, and I can have that conversation with her. But I think from our perspective as well, you know, represent what is the needs of our members and of the agricultural community. And I think to not differentiate between indoor and outdoor use and to not create a scale difference really makes very little sense in the ways that we've all put forth. And I think that, you know, it's really unclear, and there'd be clear inequity if we have 1,000 square foot in law, but it's not differentiated, and the CCB itself can't actually make a different craft license number for when they do differentiate, because 1,000 square feet is already in law and it's mandated. And that's a concern we have as well. And our strategy, I guess, is, like I said, is just to push. We weren't involved in this conversation very much. We've been trying to be involved, and we hope that this year, if that happens, that we can go into Janet's committee and, you know, and speak to her and say, you know, we're representing our community. This is why this makes sense, and have a conversation about it. But, you know, last year we really weren't able to be a part of that conversation.
Josh, did you have something?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add on to that, you know, that these policy positions are really coming from a perspective of advocating for, you know, what we see as the bulk of the Vermont industry, the local Vermont businesses, the in-state owned businesses especially. And, you know, I think if Janet Ansel is going to strike these things from it, then we can do our job in advocating for why this makes policy sense in her committee with that stuff in the bill, because it's based on merit. So if we're here agreeing that these things make sense and that they would be right, but that Janet Ansel wouldn't approve of them, then I would ask that we let Janet Ansel not approve of them instead of not putting them in now because we don't think she's going to approve of them.
Well, I got a few more years in this business than you have, Josh. I've been at this for 40 odd years, passing stuff in Montpelier, and the art of compromise is probably the greatest asset that a legislator can have. And you learn that you don't always get the biggest bite of the apple the first time you go to bite it, but yet you go back a year or two later and you get another bite and you get another bite. And whereas if you don't get that first little bite, you're never going to get anything. You got to start all over again. And you know, if we get going, if we can get that 1,500 feet, get a cap on the top so the big guys don't rob the market. And then if we find in a year or two that, hey, this is all working really slick, we could use, the little guys could use a little bit bigger plots. They could be outside. You know, I've never seen a bill that we couldn't amend. And that most of them get amended. And usually the second year, you always do a review of any major legislation that you passed the year or two before, just to make leveling out adjustments. And so the second time around, if things are going well, it's much easier to make those adjustments and move to where you really should have been in the first place, but it takes you a year or two to get there. And, you know, I'd lot rather get a little bite at the apple than no apple at all. And Janet's in a position where, hell, she could stop the whole show as being chair. and there's no denying that, you know, that's just the way the rules and the way it works. It's like Nancy Pelosi in Washington almost. You know, but anyways, other comments, Jeffrey?
If I may really fast, Graham, just to cap this topic from my perspective, to underscore what other states have told us is basically that 1-to-4 ratio stands. So in terms of production and a livelihood, we should expect roughly 1,000 square feet inside is equivalent to, ultimately at the end of the day, 4,000 square feet outside. So it would be, Vermont would be the exception if we did not have acknowledgement and differentiation between indoor and outdoor. So I just want to underscore that, and I do understand process, but I also think it's mindful to be, you know, aware of what the industry is doing and what other states have told us. Vermont is not leading this, so there are lessons learned from other states. So I'll just leave it at that. And Graham, I do believe you had a follow up.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to speak to the, if I may, I just wanted to speak to the max production cap that you mentioned, Senator Starr. I think if you all put out a max production cap of, I think I heard you say around 30,000 square feet, without differentiating between indoor or outdoor mixed light, it would be very hard for our coalition to support, because we're recommending a max production cap of 10,000 square feet for indoor production and 40,000 for outdoor production. So if you put in 30,000 without differentiating, you're essentially tripling what we think is appropriate for indoor production being allowed, and which makes it even more inequitable for outdoor production, which is the opposite of our intention. So that's a concern I'm expressing, and I think it's the same at the baseline. And I don't know if it's possible simply to put in the ratio that Jeffrey is recommending as a standard in the law itself. But I'll leave it there.
Well, I would just say I'm open to putting in larger amounts for outdoor and the commensurate change to current use. That's fine with me. I think it's a real roll of the dice, but that doesn't bother me if you know, if you're comfortable with the gamble that we don't get anything, I'll follow your lead.
I mean, if I may, Chris, Senator Pearson, if it would help, we do have sister organizations in other states. We can bring policy directors to these conversations if it would be helpful with Ansel and others who can speak to this indoor-outdoor differentiation that, you know, they've been operating under for several years. But we're welcome to bring those resources if that's helpful from other states.
Well, it's not for me to say what's helpful with her. She's an opponent of this. You know, you guys, it's an inconvenient reality that we face that has held us back for years. Okay. I mean, I've been pushing this when I was in the House in 2014. I forced a floor vote on this. She was opposed. I mean, you don't like the reality. I don't like the reality. But that's just what we're dealing with. So if you want to say to Janet, we're gonna now make you say that 4,500 square feet of outdoor is part of current use, go for it. You guys make that call, and I'll back you up. I think it's the wrong strategy, and I think you'll get zero bill, but that's your choice.
If you go 1,500 indoor, that's 6,000. That's outside. I mean, hell, it won't cut it. You can't. That's you know, pushing. That'd be pushing an acre, I believe, and they aren't gonna buy that. But hey, yeah, I got some people that want to grow this stuff, but I haven't got personally a freaking dog in the fight. So, and you know, I don't even know if I don't think I've ever voted for this in the first place, because I felt that we had enough drugs floating around out there without legalizing another one to pump into whoever, then have to rehabilitate everybody. I mean, yeah. But anyhow, if I don't know.
Bobby? Bobby? It's Anthony.
Oh, your picture. Okay.
Yeah,
go.
something's weird with my iPad. I can't seem to get my video on. I've been listening though to this whole conversation. I've just also been dealing with some semi-emergency stuff going on in my other committee, but I just wanted to chime in and say that I think that we all should take to heart what Christopher and others have been saying about the difficulty of moving this bill forward at this point. It's kind of an inconvenient truth that we have to deal with. It's that it's not really up to us to pass the bill that we want to pass. It's what we can pass. I think that the idea of differentiating the indoor and outdoor, we could do that and maybe in a simple way, given what Michelle gave us, where we just say 30,000 is outside, X 10,000 is inside, or something like that. But I guess all I'm saying is, you know, we're down to the wire here, and we've been talking about this bill for 5 years, and we're coming pretty close to like having to stop the conversation and bite the bullet and say what we want to do. And I would just caution us to try to come up with something that is doable, because there are people who would rather just see the bill die on the vine, and I would hate to see that happen. Sorry, I can't see you all. I can see you, but you can't see me.
Oh yeah, you can see that.
Yeah, I see that.
I don't know.
But I think at this point in time, it's really important to keep it relatively simple. I mean, the Ag Committee got this bill. The Ag Committee got the bill just the other day for the first time ever, which is unfortunate. But I don't think we can afford to have these like long, winding conversations about what we really hope to have, because we're basically down to have we have like an hour to like work this out between today and tomorrow. We just don't have the time or the ability to like work it through much more.
Well, I thought it was 1 to 4, Anthony, not 1 to 3.
Well, sure, whatever. Yeah, no, that's fine. I whatever works.
Well, whatever works. You want to, I mean, we have numbers that kind of support, I thought, 1 to 4.
Yeah.
If you grow inside, you have 10,000 feet, but if you grow outside, you should be able to go 40,000 feet. And that's what other states have done, and what has worked is, I think, am I right on that, guys?
Sorry, I was muted.
So-
Correct. California, Oregon, Maine, there are several of the more agrarian leaning states and territories of states that have adopted that sort of ratio. In fact, there are others, parts of Oregon, that have a 5 to 1. So it varies, but we thought a 4 to 1 was appropriate for Vermont.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody wants to, the committee members, any of you want to make a suggestion or a motion to propose that, and then if it carries, we'll have Michelle do the number and add that to the proposal that we're going to send to Sears.
So I more than just the concept though, when Michelle and I spent about half an hour about it last night trying to figure out how to do it simply, it wasn't simple. So so it's not just the concept. I think, do we want to say, here's the small end indoor, here's the big end indoor. The board can figure out a commensurate that's roughly 4 to 1 relationship for outdoor. Is it, do we want to express it as empowering them to do that? Do we want to direct them to do that? I think they're already empowered, but I think we could probably make that more plain. How do you want to deal with the tax implications? Should there be a commensurate fee adjustment, or is it, in this tier, the fee is X and you're indoor or outdoor at those? There are a lot of questions to unpack. And as Senator Polina says, we got 12 minutes now. No lawyer to help us. So that
but
was,
Chris, do
that's
we
why
have to solve all those issues? I mean, the whole beautiful part of this process is we can look at maybe just the quick agricultural issues and push it along. I just, I think you keep him. I guess where I am is let's get to a place where we can move it and let the process continue to play out.
so what does that mean?
I would just get the thing out of our committee with, slight adjustments like your amendment or something else to move it. I mean, I don't have a dog in this fight. Like Bobby said, I'm just honestly not that 100% that interested in the topic and don't want to spend that much time on it, but also don't want to kill it.
We could just say, since we're only writing a memo back,
Yeah.
here's some of the language. We also encourage you to figure out some way to direct the board to acknowledge that outdoor grows should be bigger. We could
See,
do that.
my only dog in this fight is I don't want our growers, our farmer growers, to end up like our dairy guys. If we can
I
help.
just don't think we're going to figure that out in a day or two, Bobby. That's my thought is, that's a long.
No, but if we cap the damn size that somebody can get to be, we've taken care of that. And there's plenty of money at where we capped it for anybody to be able to survive and do okay. But it allows more growers, because if you let one guy grow 4 acres, I mean, just think of the number of little guys you're bumping out of the way. And then they corner the market, they start selling cheaper, and they crowd the little guys more and the little guys more, and pretty soon the big guys have got the whole show.
I'm fine putting that cap in. I think, again, it has a long ways to go, but if that's a recommendation here, I can live with that.
Me too. I don't much care about the minimum. I don't see that, who cares?
But the max,
Yeah, I think the max is way more important.
yeah.
And I'm sympathetic to Chris's question about the current use, but I don't know that that's our business here. I mean, I don't know.
Well, that's a whole nother fight. And what the hell, if it is taken out, what's the big deal on a little plot, 30 by 50? I mean, it isn't gonna cost the farmer $20. I mean, more a year in taxes. I mean, I don't know why there's a big fight over that anyways. If, we aren't talking about big bucks here.
I think it's wrapped up in whether or not it's considered agriculture and some of those questions, but the Senate hasn't historically gotten its way on that one.
It's certainly agriculture, but say, how long are you gonna argue over the change in your pocket if somebody's stealing the dollar bills out your back pocket? You wanna be able to count here a little bit.
So we'll try to wrap this up tomorrow then, Mr. Chair. What do you want to do?
Well, as soon as we can get Michelle going, if we'll talk to her about these numbers and put it into a form that we can send to Sears. Yeah, we'll wrap it up in the morning.
We're kind of lucky because one of the members of Senate Judiciary is not here today, Senator White. So they won't be taking a vote on it until tomorrow anyway.
Good. And of course, they're a morning committee. So, yeah, Josh, you had a question?
Graham, if you want to jump in, then I can go after you.
Oh, Graham's ahead. Oh, yeah, he's got his little yellow hand up. we just go like this so I can really see the hand. Go ahead, Graham.
Thank you, Senator. Just in light of you asking for recommendations and describing the limitations that you're facing, if you're just writing a memo to Senate Judiciary and that's what you're sending, I think that 1-to-4 ratio is important from our perspective. And when you speak to the cap being important to you, I think, as I said, like we would not support a cap unless it was articulated via indoor or outdoor, because we would see it as potentially making it more inequitable for outdoor producers if it was just stated that 30,000 square feet, for example, was the cap without stating that that was for outdoor production explicitly. So if you're just writing a memo, I think those are the most important things for us. If you want to do the floor and the ceiling and just the indoor outdoor ratios, and I understand the directive for us to compromise and to consider that more. And I would just remind the committee too that we originally had like 5 or 6 pages of proposed amendments, including our racial equity amendments. They were almost 20 pages or more than 20 pages. And this is our only opportunity we've ever had to speak to an equitable committee on this. So we do appreciate it. We understand your limitations. We have really tried to compromise and really tried to isolate and, you know, prioritize what we're speaking with you about. And I think those are recommendations that I think could go to the Senate Judiciary Committee.
So 1-to-4 indoor, outdoor, and no cap, did I hear you say, Graham?
Well, if the
No, I think,
sorry.
I was just going to say we support the cap at the ratio of 1-to-4, 10,000 feet indoors and 40,000 feet outdoors.
Yeah. Yeah. Josh?
Yeah, I just wanted to call out one thing that it sounded like we had common ground around a few minutes ago, which is reducing the cap for indoor grow down to 10,000 square feet, which is our recommendation, and I think more appropriate, even going off of Massachusetts. Their population is about 10 times larger than us. So if 30,000 square feet was 1/3, 10,000 square feet would be 1/10, and that's in line with the population difference between the two states. And then if it was 10,000 square feet indoor cap with outdoor grows being allowed to be 4 times larger than indoor grows, that would be quite simple language that achieved the differentiation between outdoor and indoor and set those caps. And I do appreciate this committee being so concerned about capping the production and protecting the small farmers, because I certainly, for one, am in agreement that that's very important. So I want to express that acknowledgement.
Just to follow up on that, a little bit of industry insight. I agree the 10,000 indoor cap is what we should be reaching. Chair Starr, in the industry, when you get into the 30,000 square foot for indoor cultivation, that's when you get into the factory farm type activity, which we're trying to avoid in the state. That is the large sort of output of cannabis indoor. That's that 30,000. That's what we're trying to avoid. Let's cap that at 10,000. I just want to put it out there. That's what the industry sees.
So 10 inside 40, yeah, 10, 40. Yeah, 1-to-4. Yeah. Committee, anything else that you'd like to add or talk about?
I would just say I'm not convinced 10 is the right number.
No,
But
we'll talk about
that.
Sure. And looking for my schedule for tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, we've got just a couple of things right at 9 o'clock. And then we'll try to get this issue wrapped up, by mid-morning and get it down to Senator Sears. If we could get hold of Michelle later today, maybe we could get her to start drafting up, some language once we chat again. Anything else for this morning? Good, everybody. Well, thanks guys for showing back up today. I don't know if we're gonna wear that soil all out, plowing it here. We may not be able to even grow any cannabis if we keep plowing the dirt. Gonna ruin it. But no, I think we made, you know, we're making some headway and hopefully it'll help our small growers and our regular growers and so if you want to punch back in, you know, if you're around, want to get in tomorrow morning, you know, that's great. We should be able to be on to this by 9:30, well, 9:45 maybe. So with that, if there's no other business, I'll adjourn the meeting and thanks again for you guys for your time and your help and we'll hopefully see you tomorrow.
Thanks,
See
Senator.
you other guys on